All right, ready to roll? Let's go. Where'd we get up to? Oh, the bottom, right?
Josh Rav Nachman Mishum really small.
Oh, third, thank you. Tezayin Amabeis. So again, we had this Machlokes in the Mishna. So it's interesting because it comes out in the Mishna. From the Mishna, it sounds like this shtick of making an Eruv with just poles, or making with the luggage straps, right? So it sounds like in the Mishnah, it's a Machlokes, whether it's allowed to be done by a private person or only by people in a shayar in a caravan. That's what it sounds like. But the Gemara comes out, no. Everybody holds it can be done by a yachid. It's just a matter of how encompassing is the Eruv allowed to be, right? So the Chachamim said, everybody can use the Eruv and finish. That doesn't make a difference too, right? It's the shayar, not the shayar, right? But Rabbi Yehuda, what we're saying is that he has more of a limitation on it, and he says that you could only do the Eruv for the areas that you need. You're not allowed to enclose a lot of open areas, right? Only if you're a caravan, then not a private person. So that's basically what we said. So now we continue with that. So by the 2 dots, 6 lines up from the bottom. So Darav Reb Nachman Mishum Rabbi Rabbeinu Shmuel, right? Reb Nachman dash in the name of Rabbeinu Shmuel. L'chayra, that Rabbeinu Shmuel is not Shmuel, right? It's very interesting. He's not Shmuel. Right? It can't be regular Shmuel from Rav and Shmuel. Otherwise, why would they call him Rabbeinu Shmuel here? No? Anybody think I'm saying? I don't know who this is. Right? But I mean, he must have been pretty chashuv if he got Rabbeinu Shmuel and Shmuel didn't have any prefix in front of his name. Okay, whatever it is. So Yachid, Noistam like base of Sayim. So a Yachid, we allow him to have two saw. He's allowed to have two saw, which is 5. What do we say that? 5,000 square amas. Bays, which is 100 by 50, right? 100 amas by 50 amas, which is not that big, by the way. We're going to get more to this in the next Perek. It's really not that big to have this open space in an Eruv for a Yachid. It's not that big, but it's not really so negay. We'll see in the second Perek, Bez Hashem. Bays, nice and little base asayim, right? 2 also get base asayim. Gimel, nasu shiyar. But once you have 3 people, then they become a caravan. But nice and land base sheish, right? You give them 6 base saw, right? So who is that like? That's like Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, Shavakta Rabbanan, Vadak Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Yehuda. You left the Rabbanan. We go with the majority, the Rabbanan or the Rav, right? So you left the Rabbanan. You're doing like Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that a Yachid only gets based on Sayim. So you say Hadar Aikim, Rav Nachman Amayra Alei. So Rav Nachman, Aikim means stood up in Amayra, and Amayra literally means somebody who says over his Torah. Sort of like, it's not a translator, but it's somebody who says over, sort of instead of the microphone, instead of a microphone. So he uses this Amayra to say things over. Whatever I darshan before you is actually a mistake. Right? The truth is, kachamru. This is what was said. Yachid noisim le'beisasayim. A yachid you give him two saw. Shnayim noisim le'beisasayim. Shloisha nasu shiyar v'noisim kol tzarkon. Okay, so again, the yachid you give him beisasayim. 2 you give also beisasayim, but 3 becomes a shiyara and you give them unlimited. So now this is different. The first 2 cases is like Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. The last case is like the Rabbanan. Let's get that clear. Yeah? And originally he said the whole psak was like Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. Now he changed. He says the first 2, meaning a Yachid or 2 people, he's passing like Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. The last case of that, if they have three people together, that's a caravan, and then they have unlimited, then he's passing like the Rabbanan. So that's what the Gemara asked when I went on to the next number. Reisha, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Sefer Rabbanon. Right? So the Reisha is Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. And Sefer is the Rabbanon. So he's in, yes, Mishum Dekoy Avu B'shita say, because Rabbi Yehuda, right? This is Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. Right? So since Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishna, he paskens that way, so then he has a right to go in the first two cases like Rabbi Yehuda, because he had another Tana to pasken like. So therefore, he didn't necessarily have to go with the Rabbanan. But in the last case, he has to go with the Rabbanan because he has to go with the Rav. Okay, so Amar Rav Gilal Amar Rav Shloisha b'chamesh asurin b'sheva mutarin. This requires a little bit of math. It's not really that difficult. You have three people, right, that are not allowed to carry in an area of 5 besa, right? But b'sheva mutarin. But they are allowed to carry in 7, and that sounds like a riddle. We're saying that the maximum you can get is 6. So then, meaning according to Rabbi Yehuda, the maximum you can, again, according to Rabbanon, you get unlimited. So that's not an issue. There's got to be talking about Rabbi Yehuda, and he's saying 3 with 5 besa is asr, 7 is mutter. How could that be? That should be more asr. 7 should be more asr, not more mutter. So Amar Rav Hachi, did Rav say this? Amar Lahu, he said, dioyraysa nevi uksibi damar Rav Hachi. The Torah and the Nevi'im and the Ksuvim, right? Meaning he's not making a shvua. I don't think this is a shvua. I mean, Rashi says it's a shvua, but it's not a lashon of a shvua, right? So I don't know if that's Rashi saying this means a shvua, but I mean clearly Rashi saying that this means a shvua, but it's not a lashon of shvua. So either way, he's making a heavy duty statement because he's saying by the Torah, by the Nevi'im, by the Ksuvim, I'm going to say that Rav did say this. So Rav Ashi, my kasha, what's your question? Dilma hachi kamer. This maybe this is saying. Right? If you have 3 people, they require right, 3 people normally get 6 according to Yehuda, and they took 7. Afilu b'sheva mutarin. Right? Then even with 7, they're going to be mutter, right? Because it doesn't meaning you always get 2 sa extra space from what you would necessary. So basically what we're saying is you really get 8. When we're saying 6 is what you're allowed to have, and then you get like a buffer zone of 2. So really you're allowed 8. So that's what it means 7. Right? But what we're trying to say, if you have 3 people, right, they only needed 5, then all they get is 7. Because basically, afilu b'chamish asurin, then even with 5, they're going to be asur. It's basically saying that you do get this, everybody gets this bonus 2 sa. Yeah? Right? Meaning and when it's 5 and then they go to 7, meaning then they went already over their 2 sa limit. Okay, tonight the first part is hard and the rest is much easier. Then, but we said, but as long as you don't have 2 sa, panui means available, meaning totally with nothing going on there. My la panui adam, does that mean panui adam, meaning there's no people living there? So you see that you're not allowed to have 2. So he said, lo, not like panui kalim. No, it means that you can't have kalim over there, right? But not people. Fine. Itma shloisha. Now we have a different shot. Okay, so that's the end of that calculation. A little difficult, but from here on, it's a little easier. So now we're saying that you have 3 people that's considered a shayara, and according to everybody, it's much more lenient. What happens if the situation changes in the middle of Shabbos? Meaning Shabbos, there's 3 guys, and then 1 dies. Meaning, so let's say Shabbos, they have an Eruv surrounding, let's go with the simple case, 6 base, 6 society, right? And then 1 guy dies. So now really they should only be entitled to 4 or maybe 2, depending when you hold like, right? So do we say that the status changes in the middle of Shabbos? Do we say not like that? And then the Gemara is going to say the other way. Then he said the other way around. Let's say somebody comes, right? Fine. So let's see. So itma. Shloishu meis echon mehen. If 3 were there and then 1 of them died, right? Shnayim b'ni toisva alein. And you have 2, and then somebody else came on Shabbos. So do we change the status or not? So Rav Huna, Rav Yitzchak, to Machlokes, Rav Yitzchak. Chadam or Shabbos garemes. One said Shabbos causes it, which means that once Shabbos starts, you're allowed to have an Eruv of 6. That's not going to change. And Rav Chadam or dioyraysa garment, and one says those that are there are garment. And what meaning if 3 goes down to 2? then you're not going to be able to use the Eruv. Or if 2 goes up to 3, then you will be able to use the Eruv. Right? So, but we don't know who said what. So the Gemara says, let's say that it's Rav Huna that says Shabbos kozit, Amar Rabba, Bai mi Rav Huna, Ubai mi Rav Yehuda. They asked the Shad from Rav Huna, they asked the Shad from Yehuda. Eruv derech ha-Pesach, v'nistam ha-Pesach, derech ha-Chaloin, v'nistam ha-Chaloin, Ma'u. Now this case is talking about, right, we know that even if you have 2 people live side by side, right, and each one has a fence, and they're totally fenced, so they're allowed to carry in their own yard. Can they carry from one person's yard to the next? The answer is no, they can't do it unless they put some challah. One of them puts challah or matzah from one property to the other property, right? So, but what happens if, but they had an opening, they either had a doorway or a window, and that doorway or window got closed up, right? So now, l'chayra, there's no way for them from one to get to the other. So what happens if they throw it over the fence? Are they allowed to do that or not? So again, this happened in the middle of Shabbos. Yeah? So again, Eruv derech ha-Pesach v'nistam. They made an Eruv through the doorway, right? Because they were able to access each other's properties. V'nistam ha-Pesach, and then the doorway got closed up. Derech ha-Chalayin, through the window. V'nistam ha-Chalayin, the window got closed up. What's it did? Formally, Shabbos, hoil v'hutra hutra. On Shabbos, once it's mutter, it's mutter. So once you're allowed to carry from one property to the other, even though the situation might have changed, so it's still mutter. So we see clearly, Rav Huna says that once Shabbos starts, then the status never changes. So Tistayim Tzigmar says, yes, that must be that's Rav Huna. So then Lema Rav Huna v'Rav Yitzchak beplukted the Rav Yosi Rav Yehuda committed. Let's say Rav Huna Rav Yitzchak are arguing with what same Machlokes are Yosi and Rav Yehuda, which are very interesting Machlokes that comes up sometimes with an Eruv. The Tran, and we'll see this much later in the Masechta. The Tran chatzeiros shenifritza mishtei ruchayso. Let's say you have a yard that got broken from both ends. That's a whole shaila exactly why it says from one end, meaning from both ends. Why can't it just be from one end? Right? Meaning basically the point is the Eruv broke on Shabbos. That's exactly the case. The Eruv broke on Shabbos. But the Gemara is saying in a case where it had a fence and then there was an opening on one end and an opening on the other end. Or a house that from 2 sides got broken open, right? Or a mavui whose chatzeiros or lechis were removed. So Tosfos says that doesn't really mean Rashi says it in Tosfos S on it. Tosfos ask on it? I mean, Tosfos comments about it, but it can't be plural because we paskin that you need either a kaira or a lechi. You don't need 2. From here, these are lashon of Rabbin. But either way, so the lechi or the kaira got removed. So basically, in the middle of Shabbos, the Eruv went down. That's the case. So mutar and loisa Shabbos, vasur and lasad lavi. Rav Yehuda says that Shabbos, once the Eruv was kosher for Shabbos, it remains kosher for Shabbos. Right? A very difficult sheet to understand. If it's mutter for that Shabbos, then it's mutter forever. And if it's also forever, then asur and loisa Shabbos, then it's also for that Shabbos. Meaning he's saying, it's either the Eruv is good or it's not good. You can't start splitting this Shabbos from the next Shabbos. So, Lema Rav Huna, Damak Rav Yehuda. Let's say Rav Huna says like Rav Yehuda, who says that the status remains the same for the rest of Shabbos. And Rav Yitzchak, Damak Rav Yosi, and Rav Yitzchak says like Rav Yosi, who says that the status will change in the middle of Shabbos, meaning that the Eruv became puzzle. Rav Huna, no, another Amri, I feel Rav Yosi. I could say even according to Rav Yosi, I'd kind of like Rav Yosi also, when Rav Yosi said it over there, he said there's no more mechitzas. So how can you make an Eruv kosher if there's no fence? You gotta have an Eruv there. Here by the people, there are mechitzas. Just one guy died, or an extra guy came and moved in on Shabbos. That's not going to change the status of the Eruv, right? Rabbi Yitzchak says, no, I can even say like Rabbi Yehuda. I'd kind of like Rabbi Yehuda Hasam, Eladisnu over there. Rabbi Yehuda was saying that Rabbi Yehuda would say that it's okay because there's people living there, right? But here there's no diyurin. right? And that's such a big change that therefore he would agree that you wouldn't be able to allow it. So it's inconclusive, like we said last night. That was the word, right? Inconclusive of which way we go. Now we're going to deal with that, and I think it's Daf Tzadi Dal, Tzadi Hey later on in the Masechta of what taka do you do if the Eruv falls down in the middle of Shabbos, right? Do you just say that the Eruv is good for the rest of Shabbos or not? Fine. You either need, again, the Mishna said, the Tanakama said, you can make an Eruv with posts, just straight posts, and that's it, every 3 tvachim, or you can make it with the lovage straps, like we said, by the sukkah. And then we had Rabbi Yehuda that disagreed, and then we had the Chachamim who said you could do it either way, right? So that's the same opinion as the first opinion. Hainu Tanakama. So what answers, he could be no Yachid be Yishuv. The difference is if it's a Yachid in a town. Let's say a Yachid in a town, is he allowed to or not? Right? According to the first shita, a Yachid can't do it inside a town. Like a Yachid can do it out of town, but not inside a town. And the second shita holds, no, he can't do it. He can't. The second shita holds you could do it anywhere. Fine. Okay. So the end of that sugya, not an easy sugya. Now it really gets. Now it's much more easy. Much easier. So Arba Dvarim, Zok the Mishna, right? Arba Dvarim Patru b'machane. There are 4 things, 4 mitzvahs that they said that you're patur from doing if you're in a camp. Now Rashi says, what does it mean b'machane? It doesn't mean a sleepaway camp, right? It means, although there's many guys I'm sure that would take the liberty to be it's camp. We don't have to keep so many things. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a camp where they're going to do a war, right? So mevi'in eitzim mikom makom, which is very interesting. You're allowed to take wood from wherever you want. If you're out to do war and it's a mechemes, we're going to see exactly what type of mechemes is in the Gemara. It's a mechemes of reshus even. Then you're allowed to take any wood you want, and we're not worried about stealing. Okay? And you're patur from washing your hands. We'll see on Amud Beis if that's talking about natilas yadayim or mayim achronim. Umi Demai. Demai we had a few times. Demai is fruits or vegetables, really vegetables that came from fruits that came from an amoret, who we know doesn't keep, or we're not sure whether he keeps the mitzvahs or not. So therefore, whether he separates the truma. So we're we're not sure. So therefore, we have to re-give it. We have to give it again, which is a.
Is that bedafka because this is in Chutz La'aretz?
Those that are. Is it bedafka because you're in Chutz La'aretz? No.
I mean, there's no milchama in Eretz Yisrael.
What?
Which milchama is in Eretz Yisrael?
You mean how could it be? You're saying how could it be a mechemes or reshus if it's in Eretz Yisrael? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, where? There was no milchama in Eretz Yisrael.
Because that
it's talking about a din.
It's
a din if you could do it or not. It doesn't matter if it really happened or not. What's the difference?
No,
if it didn't happen, that's the point.
No, in any of the cases where there was kibbutz yachid.
That's outside Eretz Yisrael.
But that became part of Eretz Yisrael.
Afterwards, not at the time.
After they won the war, you're saying?
After they won the war.
Yeah, so let's say they were camping out in Eretz Yisrael, and they were setting up to go to war.
They were on the. You're saying they were on the.
Yeah.
Border. They were on the border.
Yeah.
Okay. I hear that.
Okay.
Or they could have taken fruit.
Yeah. So I don't know. I hear the ha'ara, but l'chara that's Yisrael. He's saying they were on the border, and it was still in Eretz Yisrael, right? Okay. So, and what was the last case? And they don't have to make an Eruv either. Okay, we'll see in the Gemara which Eruv it's talking about. So Ton Rabbanan says the Gemara. What do you say?
The dafka mevi'in eitzim or anything? The first case.
What do you mean?
Are they allowed to take anything or just dafka eitzim?
No, it seems dafka eitzim. From the Gemara, it seems dafka eitzim. Dafka eitzim. What do you mean? You want to walk into a guy's house and take his steak?
Really, does he have?
Is that what you say?
By Machama, does he have a blanket head to take?
No, only it seems.
Why would it say eitzim if it meant everything?
You're gonna see the Gemara in a second.
Well, it's from the Gemara. It's going to be master that it's only 8. So let's see. So Tarabana. Machna yotzes mechamer reshus mechamer reshus. I'm sorry. Machna that you go out for a voluntary war, and it's kol shekain if it's not a voluntary war. Mutarin the gezel eitzim yivashim. That's mutter, right? That's gezel, which is pretty strong. They're allowed to steal dry wood. Yehuda and Rabanan right? They can even settle in any guy's yard, right? This is, what do you call this? Eminent domain, right? Does this sound like eminent domain?
Yes.
Does anybody know what that is? That's what the government could step in and take whatever property they want whenever they want, right? That actually plays into it a lot, but that's not this sugya. But anyways,
what's shot with dry
so
wood?
they're allowed to take dry.
What's shot with dry wood?
Oh, so very good. So what's shot, right? So dry wood is, and Rashi says it's dry wood and kol shekain wet wood, meaning dry wood. When you see that people chop up wood and it's dry, so that's l'chara means that they plan on using it in their house to heat up the house or whatever it is for fuel. But wet wood they're not going to use because it's not going to burn, right? So the Gemara is saying that even dry wood, which meaning the reason why they're saying to use the wood is because the wood is laying in the yard anyways. So therefore, we can assume the guy doesn't really want it, right? That's really the pshat why you're allowed to take the wood. So wet wood makes sense because the guy's not going to do anything with wet wood because he can't use it for fuel, right? But dry wood maybe he could. We're saying no, still you're allowed to do it. Still you're allowed to do it, right? It doesn't say the word af, but that's the way Rashi understands it. It's eitzim yivashim, and he says kol shekain wet, right? Yeah, fine. And then Yehuda and Rabanan says that you're even allowed to go. They're allowed to park themselves in your yard. And wherever it is that a person dies, because in war, unfortunately, people die, you just bury him right there. You don't have to go bring him to a cemetery or anything, which we see in the Gemara Vayter. So right? You're allowed to steal dry wood. Right? This was takana that Yeshua said. Damar Mar, Asara Tanayim Hisna Yeshua. There are 10 Tanayim that Yeshua made when they're going out to Mecharas Rishus that they were allowed to do. Sheyehei Marin B'Charoshin, that they could do. Marin means from the word Roya. They could
Yaakov, they're using it.
I think you got to shut off the hotspot.
Yaakov, they got to stop using the hotspot. Netflix is pulling out too much bandwidth.
Forest or anything like that. Yeah. Why? But dafka a forest. You can't put him into a field with a grassy, like Tashi says, because the grass did start hotspot. Can you shut it off?
We haven't heard you for the last 90 seconds. We haven't heard you for the last 90 seconds. Where's for Yaakov? We haven't heard you for the last 90 seconds.
Thank you, March. March, thank you. Now we lost them.
We can go back to Amari.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good or not good?
Now we can hear you.
Now we hear you, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, I don't know where I left off. Anyway, so Rashi says Marin B'Charshin? Marin B'Charshin? Yeah, I think that's what. Yeah?
Thinking of the word what Marin means.
Yeah, okay, so you're not allowed.
Yes. The irony that Gershi's telling us and he's also losing it. I think it's a sign that we should stop.
There you go. So anyways, so Marin B'Charshin means that you're allowed to put your animals out to graze, but Rashi says only in the forest where people are not makbid if the animals eat this stuff. You can't do it in a regular field where the guy's going to be makbid. Right? So they're saying you're allowed to take wood from their fields. Right? Yeah, so that the question is, I'm sorry, so Yehoshua, I said before that Yehoshua made this takana by wars, right? This is not. This is when they were settling in Eretz Yisrael. Yehoshua mastered this for everybody. So then clearly he allowed everybody to go get wood. Yeah? So the Gemara answers no. Hasam, meaning so it's not exclusive. It's not exclusive to soldiers. So the Gemara answers Hasam behizmi vehigi. No, that's you hear me? You hear me?
Very schwach, Yaakov.
I guess I'll go outside. That's all.
Yeah, we also hear Aaron Kaplan. You know.
Hold on, let me go outside and see if it gets better.
I need to make sure Perek is on his A game.
Yeah.
Someone's got to mute the Hershey Park boy.
When Yehoshua made these tanoim,
Yeah. You hear me?
We hear
what was
you,
he
but
talking
lost
about?
Gershie.
L'shem Amud?
Am I good now or not?
You're good.
You're good.
Okay, good. Gershie, what are you saying? Now we can't hear him. All right, fine. Let's go back. So we're going.
I don't know. Can you hear me now?
Now we hear you.
Gershie, you got to submit your questions at 9, and we'll get to them at 9:15.
Anyways, Hasam behizmi vehigi. Hasam behizmi vehigi. There it's talking about hizmi vehigi. We had this before. That's bushes that are, just bushes on the ground. That's what he allowed. Hacha b'shar eitzim. Here we're even allowing more wood. That's the difference between the soldiers and what Yehoshua was masakin. Inami Hasam b'mechubarin. There, by Yehoshua, he allowed you to take a wood that's attached. Hacha b'tlushin. Here, even detached, which is a chiddush because it's detached. Somebody detached it. That means he wanted it, but still you're allowed to take it. Inami, or a third shot. Hasam b'lachin hacha b'yavation. There, it's what do you call it? Lachin, wet, meaning not raw. How do you say it? Live. Right? The trees were live, right? So they're not
Moist.
Moist, yeah, moist. Meaning, when you chop off a tree, so you can't. It's wet, so it won't light. It's campfire season up here, upstate, so it won't light. Hacha b'yavashim, and here we're talking about even yavashim that you're allowed to take if you're in the thing. Yeah, fine. So Yehuda ben Tema Omer achronim b'chol makom v'makom shenergen sham nikvarim. Yehuda ben Tema says they can even live in somebody else's yard, and wherever they die, they get buried right there. Pshita meis mitzvah. A soldier dies, it's a meis mitzvah. He's got nobody else to bury. Meis mitzvah kaina mekaimai. And the halacha is that a meis mitzvah it acquires the spot where he is, and you can bury them. So it has nothing to do with the soldiers. Anybody, you find a dead person, find a dead person in the street, and that's you can bury him. Right? So loitzricha, afal gav the islay kover. No, he has relatives. Even if he has relatives, this person from the soldier is allowed to be buried right there. The Tanya ezo meis mitzvah. A meis mitzvah is called somebody who doesn't have anybody to bury.
Yaakov. Gershie asked, who is Yehoshua allowing him to take pasture from the Goyim?
No, no. You mean when they conquered Eretz Yisrael, it was Goyim there? No, this is after they split up the land. They allowed everybody to do this.
Okay.
The way I understand is even after they split up the land, Yehoshua said, I don't know if it was like a don't worry type situation, but yeah, he was saying even though everybody's getting their own land, but these things you're allowed to do from anybody's land. Right? So we're saying, so again, the Tanya Ezu meis mitzvah kol she'en lekoivrim. Meis mitzvah is somebody who has nobody to help to bury. But if you call people and others will answer, then ein meis mitzvah. Then meaning he has relatives, so then that's not called a meis mitzvah. So the Gemara says, Gemara asks, so meis mitzvah kana mekaymai? Do we say that a meis mitzvah gets that spot right there? Vatanya amaiti meis mutal besratia. Remember what srati was the rishos harabim. Like it's another name for street. If you find a mace laying in the street, yeah, mafniyan liyamin asratia or l'smal asratia. So you remove him either to the right side of the street or the left side of the street. Sadeh bur v'sadeh near. If you have an empty field that's nothing done with it, the sadeh near and a plowed field, mefaneo l'sadeh bur. You remove him and bury him in the non-plowed field. Sadeh near, meaning you're trying to do the least damage as possible. Sadeh near v'sadeh zera. If you have a plowed field and a field that was already planted, mefaneo l'sadeh near, you put him to the plowed field. How you stay in niros, stay in zroyos, stay in boros. Let's say they're both the same. So you move them to whatever way you want. But whatever it is you see from this brisa that you do move the mace. You don't just bury him right there. Right? So Amar Bibi Hachav mace mutalah meitzar. We're talking about a mace that he's on the meitzar, the how do you call it? The boundary. He's on the boundary. Since you have to remove him from the boundary, once you have to move him, so you have to move him to where you can move him whichever way you want. Now the reason why you have to move him is because you can't just have a guy buried in smack in the middle of the street or on the boundaries. You have kohanim that are going to have issues, right? So you have to move him. So once you're moving him, then you move him to a better place. But I don't understand. Do they do a tahara? Don't they have to move him to do it? Do a tahara, or are they just going to pour water on him right there?
Why wouldn't they just take him? Go ahead, Doc.
All right, Simon, your turn. Go ahead.
Why wouldn't they just take him to, if they're already moving, why wouldn't they just take him to a base kavaros at that point?
Yeah, that's a good.
Archgo says in the footnote that if you do that, it's too much of a tircha. People are just not going to do it.
It's too much of a tircha. They're burying a guy in the middle of a field somewhere.
It's in the time of war. It's a time of war.
No, this is really, I think this is any time you find a meis mitzvah in the street.
A meis mitzvah doesn't allowed out because of time of war.
It says they're gonna go out to make arrangements for its burial, and they might neglect the corpse and leave it unprotected on the road in the interim.
Oh, so it means it sounds like it's only in the interim. Meaning they'll go back and get it, but meaning they'll deal with other things meanwhile. No.
What's the concern that they're that they're burying the mace in the middle of nowhere? Didn't they do that with Rachel Imenu?
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly what they did. Yeah, right. That's a good point. Tucker. That's what. Yeah, they just buried him, but they must have moved. Yeah, I guess in the middle of the street. I hear. Yeah, very good. Okay, so fine. So this is the most practical. Now we get back to like to brachas. This is geschmack. So they're potted from washing their hands. Amar Abaya, mayim rishonim, mayim achronim chayva. That's mayim rishonim. We let them skip out on washing for bread, but mayim achronim is a chiyuv, and you have to do it. Yeah, now that's pretty wild because we are very machmer on mayim rishonim. We're not too makbid on mayim achronim. Right? So Amar Rav Chiya Barashi Mipnei Ma Amru Mayim Achronim Chayva. Why do we say that you're required to do Mayim Achronim? Mipnei Shemelach Stoimis Yesh Shemesamas Einayim, because the food had this salt from Sodom that would, if you touch your fingers to your eyes, is going to make you blind. So it's a sakana, right?
You can still do it even after your bench, no?
What are you saying?
Even after your bench, you could do it. No?
Oh, very good. Amar Abaya Umashtakha Bekurta Bekura. Right, and you could find this, right? I mean, it has to be one. How does it say? It's Rashi says, "Bekur melach yesh ma'at ma'osa melach," meaning in a core of melach, there's only even if there's only a little bit.
Who told you they were benching? They're soldiers. Who told you they have to bench?
My achronim, we associate with after benching.
So
right, but that's true.
You're not in the army. You're not in the army you're not in the army where you were the sniper is going to shoot you, Chas v'sholom. So
right. Oh, so you're saying a good thing. Both of you bringing up a very good thing.
Maybe throw Mel Sadimus on them.
Well, what happens if they're not benching Taka and they're in a rush? They should still wash my achronim. No, because if it's a sakana, it's a sakana. I have nothing to do with benching. So it's very interesting because there's a few gemaras about my achronim. This gemara says that you have to wash it because you're gonna chas v'shalom, it could cause blindness. Other Gemaras say no, you have to wash your hands because it's not proper when your hands are dirty to bench. It's not proper to bench if your hands are dirty.
That's not a little bit of water then. That's full washing. Well, we just do our fingertips.
Well, that's off. So this is an important point. So now look at Toisus. Well, we'll answer that in a second. Look at the Toisus, top Toisus, mayim achronim chayva, right? Nowadays, we're not knowing mayim achronim. There ain't melech stoimus motzi beinenu, because we don't have melech stoimus. Our minig is not to toivel our fingers into salt after we eat. So since we don't have that, so it's not so required of us.
What does the Mishnah Berurah hold?
Oh, so the Shulchan Aruch.
Finish the Toisus.
So we said it. So inami that we don't dip our fingers in. That's what comes out. So what is there's a whole siman in Shulchan Aruch on this, right? Basically, Shulchan Aruch comes out that you really don't have to do it. You really don't have to do it, but the Gra says you still have to do it. But the Mishnah Berurah comes out that if your hands are dirty, you're absolutely not allowed to bench till you wash your hands. Because it's a bizayin. What are you going to do? Your hands are dirty, you're going to bench, and then you're going to get up and wash your hands? Meaning, if your hands got dirty, yeah?
Why is that a nafkamina, though, between benching and any bracha?
Oh, very good. The Mishnah Berurah says that too. He says that if your hands are dirty in the middle of the meal, let's say you're eating chicken wings or whatever it is, and your hands get dirty, right? And then you're going to make another bracha. Let's say somebody brings wine or that, then you got to.
We lost you again. Rav Yaakov.
It's the hot spot.
We lost you again, Rav Yaakov.
We don't usually eat,
well, we lost you.
We don't usually eat with our hands.
But we
yeah.
don't eat with our hands, but
anyway,
we do
so
have the hamburgers and we do it.
So Amalei Ravacha back in the Gemara. Amalei Ravacha braid the Rav Ravashi.
We can't even hear it.
Kyle Milchamai. This is something very interesting here. Kyle Milchamai. Right? Let's say somebody just was measuring salt. Yeah? You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah. We hear you. Do you hear us?
I don't know. I can't hear anybody now.
I know.
Oh, I know what happened. The car. Somebody turned on the car. Okay, I can't hear anybody.
I know that was beautiful. You took over my mute job. You just kept going. You muted everybody by default.
Hold on.
This has been an action-packed Daf. I love it.
I say we go back to the Amari.
Yeah, we hear you, but now we're talking about Amari Stoudemire. You might have to wait.
I can't hear anybody. Can anybody hear me?
Yeah.
You can hear me? I can't hear you. I don't know what's going on. I think the car turned on and picked it up. Okay, I'm continuing, yes?
Yes.
Anyways, Kyle Milchamai. If you're just measuring salt, what's the din? Right? If you're just measuring salt, what's the din? Yeah? So meaning you're handling salt. So do you have to wash your hands after that or not? Amalei ha loimi boy. Now what does that mean? He's saying this is not a question. Right? So meaning that it's pashut that of course if you're handling salt, then you have to, if you're using salt, even if you're not eating and you're not benching, you still have to wash your hands, right? Look at the Rashi. There's a Rashi kol shekain. Yeah? See the Rashi? You see, we don't have that in the Gemara. There's a Rashi kol shekain that says the tzarech. Of course you need it. Right? Of course. If you're handling salt, of course you need it. That Gemara doesn't have that. We don't. It's just Rashi.
So is that a halacha?
Okay, fine.
Is that a halacha?
Umi Demai. So what's Demai? So we said Demai is, I don't know. I see everybody laughing. I don't know what I'm missing out on. I don't know. Should I reconnect it?
No, say.
No, just
say.
Keep going? Okay. I don't want to miss out on any good jokes unless I'm the butt of the jokes. Maybe, I don't know, whatever. Okay, Demai. So, Tnan, we know that even, again, Demai is the Rabbanan. So since Demai is the Rabbanan have the koyach to be makel on it when they feel necessary. So the Mishnah says in Demai that you're allowed to give aniyim Demai and you're allowed to give guests Demai, right? So that's pashut that a guy doing milchama, a war is going to be, you're allowed to give him Demai. Some Rav Huna Tana Beis Shammai ein machilas aniyim Demai v'sachsani Demai. The Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to. You are allowed to. So it's actually a Machlokes Beis Shammai whether you're allowed to or not. Fine. Umala Eruv, that they don't have to make an Eruv. Amri Devei Rabbi Yani lo shanu el eruvei chatzeiros. This is talking about by eruvei chatzeiros that they don't have to do. Meaning, so like they don't have to do the whole everybody combined to keep a challah together. El eruvei tchumin chayovin. But Eruv techum they are chayiv. The Tani Reb Chia loiken al eruvei techum dvar Torah. You get malchus for techum and it's a dvar Torah. This is a big chiddush, right? We had this before in Gemara Shabbos where we said Rebbe Kiva is the one that holds that techum is dioyraysa. Everybody else disagreed and said that techum is the Rabbanan. This Gemara seems to go clearly that techum is dioyraysa. The big difference is because I'm upstate, so it comes up sometimes. Everything is out of the techum upstate, right? Somebody has to go to the hospital, right? So can they come back? So in New York City, so at least you don't have the techum issue. But up here, somebody goes to the hospital chas v'shalom on Shabbos. To come back is really not simple, right? Because it's out of the techum, right? Lakewood also has that issue. Fine. So Maskul Rabbi Yonasan v'chiloiken alav shebe'al. Do you make a lav? Do we give malchus on a lav that starts with al? Meaning that he's saying that the rule is, and when it's a loy set, you get malchus because it says loy. When it says al, that's not a strong enough term to require you to get malchus. So maskav Ravacha Bar Yaakov elamiyata d'chsiv al tifnu el oivas v'le yadainim. There it says don't turn to the oivas in yadainim. That's avodah zarah. Hachanami the loy lucky. This also you're not going to get malchus. Of course you're going to get malchus. So Rabbi Yonasan hachi kashale. What was Rabbi Yonasan's kasha? Lav shenit and lasos misas bezdin. We said this. We had this a couple times before, or at least once before. It's a lav that's given to the azhar of misas bezdin, right? Meaning every aver in the Torah you have to have two psukim. One to tell you not to do it, and the other one to tell you the punishment. So now, if something is given for azhar misas bezdin, and the person does the lav, you don't get malchus on it. Meaning, if he does it in a way that he's not going to be chayiv mitzvah, then you don't get malchus because it's either all or nothing. It's either the mitzvah bezin or not. So this would be a lav shenid and lasas mitzvah bezin. V'chol lav shenid and lasas mitzvah bezin ain't like an you don't get malchus. Meaning, what the Gemara is saying here is that we learn out because how do you know that techum? How do you know that techum is asur? So Rashi says because it's al yetze ishmi mekayma. A person shouldn't go out. So we learn out from that pasuk also that you're not allowed to carry the dioyraysa, right? So we're learning out two things. So the Gemara is asking that you should. It's a lav shenit and lasar. Well, he was asking that Rabbi Yonasan was what the Gemara is saying. Rabbi Yonasan was asking it's a lav shenit and lasar. How can you say that you get malchus? So Amar Ravashi miksiv al yotzi. Does it say don't take out? It says al yetze, right? Don't go out. So. That's referring to techum. It's not referring to carrying. Okay. So what time is it now? Time is it? It's 10:05. Okay, because tomorrow night, Thursday night, we're going to try and do a lot of more Gemara, and it's a long block tomorrow. So let's just do the Mishna. We have a few minutes to do the Mishna. Right. It's 100 mavi. Yeah. So now, and it's also easy because we had this a few days ago. So now we said that when you have a well that the animals are going to drink out of, so a well is considered its own rishus because usually it's 10 tefachim deep and 4 tefachim wide, so it's its own rishus. So you want to bring your animals to drink from it, so it's a problem. So what you do is you make these special. Remember you make like L-shaped things, 4 L-shaped lechis around the well, and there's a special dispensation for anybody going up to Yerushalayim that they're allowed to put their animals in. So that's Oisin Pasin Libirois. You can make, thank you for the picture, Oisin Pasin Libirois. You're allowed to make boards for birois, for the wells to drink from. Arba diyumdin, Nirin Kishmaina. It's 4 diyumdin, right? Each 4 L-shaped things on each corner, right? Which looks like 8. Arba diyumdin, Nirin Kishmaina look like 8. Divrei Yehuda. It has to be 8 that looks like 12. Why? Because arba diyumdim v'arba pshutin. You need to have. He holds that you need to have. Rameir holds you need to have 4. You have to have 1 on each corner, which is a L-shaped, and then in the middle you have to have a flat board. The height has to be 10 tvachim, and the width has to be 6. And the thickness has to be only a kolshu. In between, you could put 2 ravaka. How do you say ravaka? Ravaka is a bunch of cows tied together. There's got to be a word for that. I don't know. Okay. Each, you got to have 2 groups of animals, each one made out of 3. So it's 6 animals. Right? It's made out of 4 animals. Right? But they're tied up, but not loosely. Right? So meaning that's a chumrah, because that opening, when you tie the animals together and they're not untied, not loose, right? Then that's going to make the opening much smaller. Meaning the only opening is allowed to be that big, right? It's if you're going to say that the animals are not tied up, so the opening is going to be slightly bigger, right? So basically, we say that this is 10 amas. But one is going in and one is going out. That's going to give you a little bit more room, though, because when one's going in and one's going out, you're going to need slightly more room in order for them to both fit out of there, right? So you're allowed to go as close as you want to the bear, meaning you're allowed to move these double lechis as close to the water, to the bar as possible. As long as the head and most of the animal can fit inside these walls, and not walls, these fake walls, and drink from it. Fine. Then, how far away can you go? You're allowed to go as far. Kolshu here doesn't mean a little bit. It means you can go as much as you want. You're allowed to move it as far away as you want. As long as as far as you go out, you're going to need to add pieces of wood to the middle. Meaning, because we said right before that there's a Machlokes, how much space you need. Either it's going to be 10 amas or 13 and a half. I forgot to say that the other shita with the Rameir. That was Rameir? Who was it? I'm sorry, Rabbi Yehuda was 13 and a half amas. Rameir is 10 amas, right? So, but you cannot have a space between lechis more than that. So let's say you want to go out 100 amas. So you're going to have to put a board every either 13 and a half amas or every 10 amas. Right? So Amrullah, Layamr Beis Asayim, I'm sorry, it was Rabbi Yehuda Amr ad Beis Asayim. You're only allowed to go up to Beis Asayim like we had before. Amrullah, Layamr Beis Asayim, Lagina Lakarfif. We only set a Beis Asayim measurement for a gina, for a garden or a karfif or an open field. Avalim hayadir, oisar, oimukza, oichatzer. But if it's a corral, right, or a sar is a different type of corral, oimukza we said is like a backyard. Chatzeiros, it's a yard. Afilu beis chamisha kurin, afilu beis asara kurin. Even if it's the size of 5 kur or 10 kur, mutter, then it's mutter to make an eruv there. Umutter lahacha kolshu b'vat sheyaru pasin. And you're allowed to go as far away as you want, as long as you keep adding pieces of wood. So basically, if you have a yard, like you have a big ranch, and you want to, and it's got a massive yard, and you want to make it into an eruv, since that's considered your yard, that's not a problem to keep it an eruv. So I know Aaron Cavan was asking about the golf course. I'm not sure how you look at the golf course. That's considered part of the yard of the country club, and therefore you would theoretically be able to put the whole thing in the eruv, but I'm not sure. Okay, we'll go over the Mishna tomorrow, just to remind ourselves. Okay, sorry for all the problems tonight.
So Yaakov, can I see a question?
Have yourselves a good night.
He can't hear you.
Okay. Perek.
Is Yisrael Stein still on?
Yeah.
Yisrael, are you allowed to take somebody's cigarettes if you're a soldier? I just want to know if you're allowed to do that.
Uh-oh.
Would you be allowed?
I'm going to sign off now.
I don't know. I can't hear anybody.
Never.
Still can't hear anybody.
Always ask.
Exactly. We got to show your
What
blue.
happened
That helps.
All right,
What
now
I,
have to shut off his tooth.
what did I miss with the cigarettes? Bro, what happened with the cigarettes?
He wants to know if you're a soldier, if you're allowed to take cigarettes from people.
Well, what doesn't do with anything?
I don't know. Ask him.
I think he's giving you musa for smoking.
Oh, okay, fine.
You're an Israeli soldier, and you didn't bring your
Gago,
cigarettes.
shut
There's something
up.
wrong with you.
Now you're muted.
Now I'm not muted. What? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
No, what happened is that the car started, so then it picked it up, and then I couldn't get it back to here.
Yaakov, on Tosis on Yud Zion, they used to put their fingers in salt at the end of a Suda.
Yeah, I think that means that they used to dip it. That's why I'm understanding it.
That they would dip it, and therefore that's why you had mayim achronim. I thought the food itself was salty.
That's true. He's saying two pshatim. He's saying two pshatim. The first pshat is that the food itself was salty. The second pshat is that we don't stick our hands in salt water after we eat.
Why did they do that?
I have no idea. I thought that was part of the tefillah process. That's what I thought, but I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. All right.
Shikayach.
Fine. Have a good one, everybody.